Before I could even walk, I had an affinity or a love with anything on wheels. It was only natural that I would get into the car field as a career. I graduated from high school and wasn't quite ready for college, so I took a job at a new Chrysler Plymouth dealer in the next town over. That eventually turned into me being in the parts department, and 35 years later, still in the parts field of new car dealerships. Now, it paid the bills, and I was in the car industry, and I was in the car field, and I learned a lot from that experience, but it never was exactly where I wanted to be. My passion had always been vintage cars, even when I was very young. So to me, the new vehicles were sort of appliances to me, even then. Nowadays, I feel even more so. When I drive down the road today, I can't tell a Hyundai from an Audi, and I don't even try anymore. To me, they're no different than the iPhone in my pocket that once it wears out or breaks, you throw it away. It makes so much sense to me to be involved in the vintage car field because vintage cars were built at a time that cars were personality. They told your personality. Every year they changed their designs. The showrooms would shroud the car in secrecy for the premiere of the new vehicles, and families would be gathered around at premiere night to unveil the new model, because every year back then, cars changed. Sadly, I was born just at the end of that era. I was born at the very end of the muscle car era and at the very beginning of what we now call the malaise era. Took note of what other dealers in my position were doing, and I felt they were doing a lot of things wrong, so I started this on a different concept: affordability, cars that people could get into without deep pockets and large bank accounts. So after 35 years at the dealership, my true passion had always been vintage cars, and I opened Orphan Car Garage in 2018. My name is John Wingle, this is Orphan Car Garage, and this is my dream job. So if you come to the shop, you look around, you'll see that a lot of the stuff that I have here is an Orphan brand vehicle. Orphan car by textbook, of course, is a car that was built by a manufacturer that's no longer in business. However, we don't focus ourselves just on the Orphan textbook cars. Any car, to me, that needs a home is homeless, is an Orphan car. It's just me, I'm alone. So when you deal with me here at Orphan Car Garage, it's me and only me that takes everything from the top to the bottom. There's no commission salespeople here. It's just me. There's no additional fees or dock fees. There's no paint protection, upsell, or service contracts. We keep it very, very simple and very transparent. So I think I try to do the right thing. 35 years in the car business taught me a lot of good, but also a lot of things not to do. So being an Orphan car fan, it was only natural that I have an affection for Edsel. And as many of you know, the Edsel was produced by Ford as its own division of Ford from 1958 into the fall of 1959, when they just made a few 1960 model Edsels. The first year, 1958, like we have here in front of me, is part of my own personal collection, at least for now. But the 1958 to me exemplifies exactly Edsel. It's that huge horse collar grille. Some people called it an Oldsmobile sucking a lemon. Beautiful cars. Ford had high aspirations for it. The division was named after Henry Ford's son, Edsel Ford. Edsel was a pioneer in the automobile industry. Sadly, or maybe not so sadly, Edsel was not alive for the introduction of the Edsel, because as we now know, it was not a successful Ford. And there were a lot of reasons for that. Some of it was the dramatic styling. Also, the car was introduced during a huge recession in the United States, so there wasn't a whole lot of new car sales to begin with. And I think in the end, the price point of the cars was a little off. So Mercury dealers that had Edsel dealers were competing against themselves. There was a lot of confusion in the market. This particular car was a bucket list car of mine. I've had Edsels before. I had a 1960 Edsel. I've had a couple of 1959s. But in 1959, the Edsel kind of sort of got washed down because the consumers were letting Ford know that they weren't in love with some of the dramatic styling of this car, which is exactly why I love it. This is a four-door hardtop, Corsair version, a very original car with 25,000 miles on it. This car exactly exemplifies my business model. Affordable classic cars, because these cars are still affordable. And when you go to a car show or a cruise night with an Edsel, chances are you're the only one there. So one of the very unique features of the 1958 Edsel, and only found in 1958, is this really cool automatic transmission selector. Edsel called it Teletouch Drive. You literally press the button in the center of the steering hub here to shift your gears from drive to reverse to low, neutral, park, whatever. And it was all electronically controlled. Turned out to be a little bit troublesome, a little bit tricky, so in 1959, Ford did away with the Teletouch Drive and went to a more traditional column shift. But again, I love the 1958 for its features, and this is the feature that really draws me to the 1958 model, the Teletouch Drive. You'll also notice that all the controls in the car were designed for ease of use. You've got temperature control here that you call it dial temp. You just spin the dial, very similar to what you see in cars today. This is 1958. Another car that's part of my personal collection here, at least for now at Orphan Car Garage, is another one of my very favorite cars, and I searched a long time for a good example of this car. It's very hard to find in this type of condition. This is a Marlin by the American Motors Corporation. Fairly obscure model, built only from 1965 to 1967. This particular model year is in 1966. Gone was the name Rambler. The 1965 Marlin was labeled Rambler. It said Rambler on the vehicle. By 1966, AMC realized they wanted to kind of get rid of the stodgy reputation of Rambler, and they removed the Rambler name from the vehicle in 1966 to sort of give it a more sporty image. So nowhere on this car does it say Rambler, and the only place it says American Motors Corporation is in the center of the hubcaps, which makes it a fun car to bring to car shows because most people have no idea who built this car. The ones that do are pure vehicle aficionados. A fun feature about this car is, of course, the reclining seats that Rambler was so well known for, Nash prior to Rambler. But also, this particular vehicle has just a headrest on the passenger side, which people always get a kick out of. And they think there's something wrong, that it's missing from the driver's side, but there isn't. That's how the car was built. That's how you could order this car. You could order this car with 1 or 2 headrests, and if you chose 1, you could choose which seat to put it on. It gets thumbs up, smiles, and comments everywhere it goes. Again, one of my very favorite cars from one of my very favorite automotive companies, AMC. So the Ram brand started in the early 1950s with the Nash automobile company. They figured out that the Americans needed something small and economical. But when Nash merged with Hudson to become American Motors, Mitt Romney's dad, George Romney, was the president of American Motors. And he picked up the Rambler line and ran with it, something that Nash had started, which obviously became part of the merger. So Romney's idea was not to compete with the big three with their full-size cars. They had kind of wrapped up that market, but there was still a market in the mid-1950s for a small economical car as families were moving out of the cities and needed something, a second car to run the kids to school or mom to the grocery store or whatever that may be, or dad to the grocery store. And Romney really hit it out of the park by capitalizing on the Rambler brand. Because of that, it sort of became synonymous with frugal. As we mentioned in the Marlin, by the mid-late 1960s, they kind of wanted to shrug that reputation. But this car here, this is a 1960 Rambler Super. This sort of exemplifies Rambler and what it meant and what a lot of people remember it to be. Very, very simple car, 3-speed manual transmission, straight 6 engine. Just a speedometer and a fuel gauge and a temp gauge. You'll see that there's no radio in this car. Whoever ordered this car new decided they didn't need a radio and they didn't need a clock. So there's a clock delete plate and a radio delete plate here in the vehicle. This was your bare bones 1960 transportation. But that being said, it still had style. It has some great fabrics on the interior, some great outside styling. And so even though it was a fairly economical car to buy and to drive, you still could be proud to drive it. And today they're a lot of fun to drive. They're affordable to buy. I sell a lot of them at Orphan Car Garage. This particular car was part of my collection. I purchased it out of the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, where it spent its whole life. And now it is sort of rotated through my collection and is available for adoption currently. And it's a very affordable car that obviously is very turnkey, easy to drive. Most of these cars don't have power steering or power brakes or air conditioning or power windows, things that we've become accustomed to today. But back in the day were luxuries to a lot of people, such as people that bought Ramblers. That makes this car, though, very easy and affordable to buy and to drive and to maintain. I would have no hesitation driving this car anywhere. I learned a long time ago, life is too short, and you really need to do what you love. And this is what I love. And I think it evolves into my sales because people see the passion that I have in these cars. It's not just a paycheck, it's not just a commission check. These cars are a true passion of mine, and it comes through when I go to sell a car. And every car has a story to tell. This car is no different. So I love to know the story of the car when I buy it. For a car that lasts this long, let's face it, when this car was built in 1960, American Motors never expected it to still be on the road in 2024. So the fact that it is a testament to its care and ownership over the years. Somebody or some people absolutely loved this car. I like to know the story behind that. I like to know who they were, why they saved the car, and things like that. And I have been able to do that in many cases. Unfortunately, a lot of that gets lost along the way. This particular car didn't get lost. I know the story of this car back to day one, and that makes it to me a little extra special. So if you're like me and have affinity for anything Orphan, be sure to like us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, and of course check out my website.